First off, apologies for being late. Got super lost in the transition of the campus, but thank you guys for having me. I'll try to be brief so we end on time. Mi nombre es Daniela Bueso. I'm gonna do kind of like a Spanglish. If anybody wants to speak in Spanish, please feel free. I can answer any questions. I'm originally from Colombia, half Colombian, half Honduran. Went to the Peace Corps in Paraguay back in 2013, 2015, and then that brought me here to do my master's at CSU. And once I finished my degree, I said I want to work for a nonprofit focused on international development. So Fort Collins kind of sucked me in, and I found this amazing nonprofit called Trees, Water, and People, which is based right here on Remington Street. So if you guys ever want to visit, feel free to come by. And I just want to give tribute here. We are standing on ancestral tribal lands of the Arapaho, Ute, and Cheyenne. This is actually a photo that we took on one of our projects with the Indigenous Science Program up in Soapstone Prairie here in Fort Collins. So if you guys ever get a chance to go up there, it's absolutely beautiful. There's a big bison herd up there, if you guys ever want to see it. So this is kind of like the outline that I'll go through, give you guys a little bit of history, the mission of the organization, and then I'll talk about our two main programs, which is the Indigenous Science Program and the Mesoamerican Program. And then afterwards, if we have time, I wanted to open up the floor to have an open conversation with you guys about the current situation and how to adapt to everything that's going on. So we'll end on a good note, I promise. I want to give you guys a brief history of TWP. This is a small trailer focusing on the two founders that founded TWP. It's a quick 3-minute video, but I wanted you guys to hear directly from Eagle Crates.
I was looking for statistics one day and found out in Central America, there's only one tree being planted for every 10 trees we had cut.
25 years ago, we were really committed to the motto that we had learned in Peace Corps, which was working on a really grassroots level with groups, finding out what they needed and trying to meet needs. And we were called Trees, Water, and People because we wanted to plant trees. We were looking at also watersheds. Just by planting, we were not addressing the demand on the fuel. Like, so people just needed to cook.
Pienso que fue una de las mejores decisiones que tomé en mi vida, trabajar para la Asociación por el Desarrollo y TWP.
We started with stoves to address deforestation and then found that it was a great way to create jobs, a great way to improve family health, as well as a great way to reduce firewood consumption.
El agua de la aldea, desde que somos un caserío, alrededor de 1647, viene de acá.
No, nosotros queremos ser frondosos, cupidos y árboles.
But you can't do development work thinking about new concepts. You have to see what's really going to be used in the community.
Tegucigalpa, como otras grandes ciudades, tiene ese problema de que se viene mucha gente del interior.
What was the quality of the projects we were doing? How long were they lasting? How much were they affecting all the people in the community?
I think it would be great for the younger generation to see what this forest was.
A corn stalk cannot grow overnight. A baby cannot grow overnight.
That's where I see the Trees, Water, and People playing an important role in getting us together.
And so we sat down and came up with dignified livelihoods, environmental stewardship, gender equity and inclusion, indigenous sovereignty, and youth development.
And we maybe as we manage our forest area,
Dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of people that have been employed through Trees, Water, and People working projects, and really just life improvements for tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands or millions of people. And so that investment was well made in the organization over 25 years now, and can look back and say thank you to everyone who contributed early on throughout our history and who continue to contribute today.
always thinking of the future. When you're not here, when you're not gonna be here, what did you leave? I'll plant a little tree that turned into a forest. Thank you.
guys can actually find, this film, online on our YouTube channel. Gives you, it's like a 15-minute film talking more about the deep history of TWP, but that's a little synopsis from the founders. So, like they were mentioning here, this is kind of the mission and vision that we have as an organization. You know, we're deeply rooted and believe that the people who take care of their own natural resources should be autonomous and be able to manage their own resources, in which their life depends. Meaning we want them to have a dignified livelihood, right? And us being kind of the facilitators that provide the resources that they need to be autonomous and independent and have the tools to survive, right? So we want to envision a future where everyone has an opportunity to have a trabajo digno, como decimos en Latinoamérica, be proud of that and be able to support your families, your community, and your environment, right? So we're deeply rooted into that mission and vision. So you guys are probably wondering what those are the 5 priorities that were mentioned in the video. These 5 priorities were both programs sat down and said, okay, what do we both have in common that we can, you know, reach out to the community and say, these are the 5 things we focus on. Again, every partner is different. Every partner can tackle all 5 of these or only certain of these. But these are kind of like our essential priorities that we focus on with grants, with donors, with communities. So as long as one community or one partner has one of these, we work directly with them. So just wanted to kind of show you that graphic as it drives our work every day. And this is a puzzle just to kind of showcase that if one of these pieces of the puzzles falls apart, we won't work collaboratively or collectively. Apologies that it's in Spanish, but the way TWP works is we are the connectors here in the US, right? We work directly with communities, but that direct work gets implemented and planned by local nonprofits. So we go down to the countries where we work, we talk with different community members, different NGOs. They're the ones that do the analysis, that do the needs of the community. And they come back to us and say, hey, this is what the community would like to work on. This is the resources that we need. How can TWP close that gap and help us financially? And then obviously we couldn't do our work without the donors. And I'll give you guys a brief financial update on the current situation with donors. So if one of these pieces falls apart, the work kind of shambles. So it's very important to work in collaboration. I do want to mention, so my team in particular, the Mesoamerica team, I am based here in Colorado, but I have Marvin Lopez right here. He is a Catracho, Honduran, who works down in Tegucigalpa. And then the person next to me, Madeline, she works in Guatemala, so she's a nativa. And then Castro, Helen, she's from Costa Rica, but she's based here. So we also try to hire people that represent the communities that we work with, not only for language barriers, but also cultural integration and understanding of the realities of these communities. So we have Latinos, Indigenous, white, European, we have the whole gamma in the organization. So this is a map. I'll go briefly through the Indigenous Science Program, but
Great. Or
so this is just a map. I want to briefly talk about our Indigenous Science Program. We actually started our Indigenous Science Program in South Dakota, working in Pine Ridge. It's one of the poorest Native communities in the US. We started working with solar renewable energy as well as tree planting. After working with them for about 20 years, they actually became independent. They got a big federal grant, about like $5 million. And they said, hey, we no longer need you guys. And we're like, great, that's the goal, right? That's the goal. They still work with us with very, very small projects, but they are their own independent renewable energy company. So it's pretty great. So that allowed us to expand a little more. We work with the Mountain Ute down in Southwest Colorado. It's actually one of 2 tribes here locally, which is crazy. And I think the strongest program that the Indigenous Lands Program has is in New Mexico. So we have the Tribe Pueblo Coalition, which are these 3 tribes down here, Santo Domingo Pueblo, Cochiti, and Jemez. They work on forest restoration, fire mitigation, The Prevera Coalition, they work with endemic culturally important species of the tribes, and so preparing riparian systems, bringing back cultural plants, whether for food or just environmental stewardship, and also soil health. And then the high water mark right next to the right, that is a water engineering LLC, natively owned. And so they work a lot with tribes on how to manage water resources appropriately. So they're getting a lot of traction. Unfortunately for ILP right now, the big question is what is going to happen with funding? Because if you see the partners at the bottom here, you have Nature Conservancy, which is safe, an NGO, but you do have the State Forest Division, the US Forest Service, which are federally funded. So we are trying to find ways to maybe diversify a little bit of those funders. And the sad part about Native tribes is that the majority of the funding that was cut was for women and youth. So all of that funding has been stripped away from Native lands. And so we are trying to also find ways to maybe plug in a little bit of that, of those resources into that program, right? So yeah, they're doing amazing work. These are kind of their main projects, like I mentioned, reforestation, a lot of fire mitigation, especially in New Mexico with the big conscious fire, low-tech based restoration projects, like I mentioned, native riparian tree plantings. They do offer youth internship opportunities. So all of the programs that they do on the ground, they hire only Native students, which is amazing. And they actually have a program here at CSU. I think is it NAP, Native American Association? Forgot the name, but they actually bring students from CSU who are Native down to New Mexico to get internship opportunities, things like that. And this upcoming March, they're having their Tribal Forest and Fire Summit, which they bring a bunch of Native professionals, people from all different backgrounds, departments, and they learn about fire, how do Native Americans manage their forest. So that's coming up in March. I will be down there learning a lot. So yeah, I give them huge kudos because they've come a long way. And we're hoping that the next 4 years will affect us that much. But we'll talk about that after. You guys have any questions about tribal or the Indigenous Science Program before I move on?
When did you all start this program, more or less?
So
You started like Pine Ridge, but like when did you start moving into New Mexico?
New Mexico about 4 years ago.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
wow.
It's pretty recent. So James, the fellow that you see there in the middle, he started when I started at TWP, which was close to 6 years. When he became ED, he's from New Mexico. He's from San Bernardino.
Oh, cool.
He kind of started going deeper into his roots, opened new relationships, and then the New Mexico program took off. Right after South Dakota said, hey, we're independent.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's been doing a great job, and now he has incredible connections down there. So yeah, 4 years going strong.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty great. And the Colorado one too was recent. I think it was 5 or 6 years ago. So our focus was mostly in South Dakota.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bueno, ahora vamos a Latinoamérica. So these are the kind of a map. Sorry if you guys don't. Can you guys see the map? Okay. So these are our current partners in Mesoamerica. We've gone through many transitions. We used to be the international program, then we went to Central America program, and now we're in Mesoamerica program. So Mesoamerica goes Mexico, Panama. And we recently started relationships with Red Mocac, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. We have 2 partners in Honduras, Coeas and Alesa, 2 partners in Guate, Fundebase y Utsche, and then 1 in El Salvador that we just closed relationships with because we're expanding to probably the Pacific side of El Salvador. Also, depending on the political situation, there's a lot of also defunding in environmental and education departments in El Salvador, focusing more on local security and prisons and all these other things. So lack of funding has definitely affected that. So we are trying to refocus our funding into El Salvador with even a different language. Because sadly, all of the grants that go directly to El Salvador have to have a different type of wording, you could say, to be able to get funding. So again, political situations also affect the grants, your development work, your partners, everything that you try to do, right? So, I love to, these are kind of like the programs. I'm gonna talk more with photos. I'm very more vocal, kind of open conversation with you guys. So these are kind of the main programs. And again, each partner has all of these or some of these or a mix, right? But again, we started the Central America with the international program with the Cook Stove project that you guys were hearing about in the video. So the founders went to Guatemala and saw the deforestation rates and said, how can we reduce deforestation? Plant trees. They said, that's not working. People are using wood to cook. What are they cooking with? An open fire. Okay, what can we do? So they created the Clean Cook Stove program, which was the kickstart of the program in Guatemala and Honduras. So that was kind of like our pilot. And then that program took off, right? And it's been active since the 25 years that we've been active. And then we started implementing different eco-technologies that the communities needed, like latrines, rainwater catchment systems, biojardineras, biogardens, and then we said, okay, what's next? Agricultura. So you enter into agricultura. So we started kind of adapting based on community needs. Again, these projects take a lot of time, right? So one cook stove can last 5 to 6 years. After that, you need to renew. And so we started getting into these different kind of little project areas, and we started finding partners that were already implementing this work, but needed either to improve it or needed a little bit more financing to continue, right? So, and then at the end, we started adding cultural and knowledge exchanges, so bringing even donors down to Central America and seeing like, hey, this is where your money is going to. These are the realities of the region. This is, you know, these are basic needs that a family needs to survive, right? So once you have these basic needs, then how can you employ people? So we started thinking about different ideas to do that. And so one of those great ideas came with ADESA. So ADESA is one of our partners in Honduras. They're in Tegucigalpa, and they are the main leaders of the Clean Cook Stove program. So they created the Doña Justa 3D cook stove. Doña Justa was one of the pioneers, one of the women who gave an input of a design for a cook stove. So that's why it's called Doña Justa 3D. And the 3D is the third type of model of cook stove. So we've gone through 3 generations of cook stoves. And ADESA is the main lead. And this picture right here shows maestros fogoneros. So we actually train and employ local community leaders to build cook stoves themselves. And so ADESA, the nonprofit, provides the materials for the cook stoves. They provide the training. They give the materials to the maestros fogoneros, and the maestros fogoneros go on their own, and they do their own sales. They do their own building. They even record on a software database that we have with their phones. And believe it or not, this picture is amazing to see women builders, because as you know, in Latin America, when you talk about construction, it's mostly men. So one of our biggest priorities was to plug in gender equity and inclusion into all of our projects. And now you see half and half, maestras fogoneros and maestras fogoneras, right? So this is, when we talk about a program that has taken 25 years, the first 10, 15 was construction. And now we said, okay, now how can we employ people to continue this ongoing process and actually allow them to have an income? So this has been going on for 22 years with ADESA. They build around 3,000 stoves every year with different families. They have an annual encuentro, or training, you would say. And they're doing incredible things. You know, they're reducing deforestation, but they're also improving the health of women and children who cook with an open fire. So, you know, it's not directly planting trees or doing something directly with nature, but it is in a way decreasing the amount of wood that's being cut, right? So this is, again, amazing to see a person like Elsa, who's a single mother of 5, have an income, have a dignified life. Her husband migrated to the US, is left alone, and so these are the type of opportunities we want to give people back where they are. So we also want to try to reduce climate migration because it's mostly affecting single mothers and people. So she's an example, a great example of my stuff. She's even gone to Europe to do the work. It's amazing. Bueno, now we move to COEAS. COEAS is another partner in Honduras. They're in the outskirts of Tegucigalpa. You saw the woman that was speaking Spanish in the video. They have been a caserío from the Spanish crown since 1967, I remember the date. But most recently in January 2024, they gained federal recognition as a natural reserve. So this community has been organized by volunteers that have been protecting the forest for about 37 years because the watershed comes from this forest. So all the water that comes into the communities depends on the forest. They didn't have federal kind of protection. And back in 2023, December 2023, one of their founders was killed. And in January 2024, they got the declaration named after Luis Herman Vaca. So again, lots of tensions always in Latin America with environmentalists, right, trying to protect their forests. But luckily, they got the recognition, and so now we're working with COEAS on not only providing them with funding for fire mitigation, reforestation. They have a tree nursery, but one of the most important factors that we wanted this reserve was to create a biological corridor. So if you guys, for those of you who have been in Honduras, La Tigra National Park is one of the most beautiful parks in Honduras. This is the reserve here, Mesuyapa. So this is where COEAS is located. And this is another joint community that joined the Social-Ecological to kind of protect these two mountains. So this is a little cerro called Cerro Yuca. So our mission now that they have the declaration is to connect this park with these two to create that biological corridor, which is around 74,000 acres. So we are even paying for camera traps to get biodiversity studies. There's about 18 mammals recorded, 62 bird species. We're paying for park rangers, we're paying for scientists, we're also paying communications. We're paying for the tree nursery maintenance. They do a lot of volunteer work with youth and women. And so that's the type of kind of training and workshops and tools we want to give COEAS to be able to, once they get this declaration and this corridor, they're ready to go. They're prepared with the tools that they need. So this has been an ongoing battle for many years. And now that Mero is gone, the founder is like one of those that you want to keep fighting and getting that biological corridor, which is always the dream. So Suyapa, the town has around 20,000 people. Tegucigalpa is around 1.3, and all of that water comes from these two main protected areas, right? So that's the main importance of why we want to keep that work going. So that's Honduras. Any questions on Honduras? No. Bueno, this is Utzche. So Utzche in Maya means good tree. This is an organization we've been working with for around since 2012. And Utzche is very interesting because their functioning body is the main, so the NGO is kind of in the middle, and then the board or the committee is composed of 43 different indigenous tribes. So the tribes manage Utzche, Utzche manages communities, and then TWP kind of funnels resources into Utzche. But every decision gets made by the indigenous communities. So it's a system that you usually don't see. It's usually NGO, indigenous communities at the bottom, and then resources in the middle. So with Utzche, we work with everything from land tenure to agroforestry systems to food sovereignty, community gardens, family gardens, gender equity and inclusion projects. We recently had one community pay off their land debt after 40 years. So the history behind Guate is very interesting because through the Civil War, a lot of these communities were displaced. So a lot of them went to Mexico, passed the Civil War, came back, and when they came back, their lands were gone. So the government gave them the lands they could, and they had to pay a loan. So these communities had to pay back their territory, right? And so this is how Utzche came about, because so many people were coming together saying, hey, how can we find resources to pay this land? Let's create an organization that can help us do this. So that's how Utzche was born, by paying land debt. And I think of the 43 organizations, I think around 12 or 15 are officially autonomous, right? So these are the processes that they're working on. These are it's crazy to think how it works when they leave and come back and we just don't have the resources that they need, but WITSJA is doing amazing work. And you can see communities thriving. These are some examples of communities that we visited. So we focus heavily on, again, providing families with economic opportunities. So everything from bioinsumos, which are natural fertilizers, agroforestry projects where both men and women have access to resources and economy. And you even have women's groups who just sell produce to their communities, right? So we try to just employ people. A lot of the times it's women, like I said. Guatemala also has a high increase of climate migration, and so most of these are tailored to women and youth. But they've been doing great work. They're an incredible organization. And most importantly, the next generation is the one that's kind of filling in those gaps, right? Helping their single moms do the work that they need to do. So focusing a lot on nutrition, forestry, land payments, everything like that. They also have forestry incentives. So they do have a new program where the Guatemalan government pays a community to protect the forest. So that's kind of a new way of paying back their land debt, is they're entering into these forestry payments, you could call them, that the government gives them, and then in return they pay their land debt. So we're also trying to find different programs that can help them do that. But yeah, WITSJA is an incredible organization. And then Fundebase, this is our last one in Guate. This one called my attention when we visited a department of Quiche. So this is in the northeast region of Guatemala. And this region in particular was hit the most by the Civil War. So this is sadly where you find the most impactful, or I guess the most, las rezagas de la guerra are in Quiche. So poverty, single women, very little male dominance, or say presence, because of all the deaths that happened. And it's extremely dry. So water resources have gone dry. They don't have land tenure in the Quiche department yet. And so Fundebase is also refocusing back into women nutritional programs. Land tenure is still a little more complicated in that department than the South. But we are trying, we're getting there. They even have to sign parliament papers and everything like that. But this is a new partnership back in 2023 when we went to visit, and they're heavily focused again on women, nutrition, workshops, fair markets, so everything that they produce. Fundebase actually takes these community members into mercados and allows them to sell their produce. They teach them how to sell or what price they should sell at, to kind of be competitive with the other people in the market. So this one's brand new. That's all the information we have now, but we are looking into expanding into more of the west side of Guatemala, where there's also a lot of poverty and malnutrition of children. So yeah, harsh realities in Guatemala. But because I kind of wanted to open up the floor, you know, that was a lot of information, to talk with you guys, right? I also want to get ideas, I want to get perspectives. You know, with this new administration, as you all know, mass deportations and tariffs are going to have an effect locally, right? How do we prepare our partners for everything that's going to come their way? But also, as you recently heard, the USAID funding fell through. So we also got a bunch of calls yesterday from partners saying, I lost my job, can you help me? What are other ideas? What other resources you can provide me? So it is having a direct effect in Latin America. Sadly, we depend heavily on federal funding. So how do we respond to that? And the way we are trying to do that is by finding those more private funders, family foundations, local collaborators on the ground. So La FIA, for example, it's the USAID of Central America that's based locally. Sadly, they're also suffering because they depend on also external federal funds. And it is going to get competitive, right? Think of all the federal employees that are losing jobs now. They're going to start migrating into the nonprofit sector. Funding priorities are going to shift. So it is going to become a very, very tough road ahead. But at the same time, we're finding solidarity locally with partners. People from Canada, people from Europe started reaching out, said, hey, how can we help? Finding those big family foundations that used to fund federal government or federal agencies are now going to shift their funding into more nonprofit sector. So I kind of wanted to open it up to see what you guys are thinking, what you guys have experienced, or what you have seen, right? What we can do as a nonprofit. That's currently where we're standing. We're taking it all in, trying not to affect us personally, but it is going to be tough. It is going to be tough. And I wanted to show you guys, luckily, for our program. So you look at our financials really quick. I just want to show you, give you a panorama. So this is just to show you our funding right now. This is 2023, 2024. Most of our funding comes from foundations, and believe it or not, public support, right? So another changing factor is that due to the economy, public support has gone down. So monthly donations, monthly donors have dropped. We also have a little bit more of investment income, meaning DAPs. So stock market, DAPs, when people pass away, they put you on their will. Trying to diversify different types of funding because public support is gone and now federal funding for certain projects is gonna go down, right? So how do we recover that piece of the pie, which it is very important to know, even country-wise, where you're standing, right? So a lot of this funding is gonna shift. El Salvador basically not gonna be there, Honduras. We have good private foundations who fund. Mexico, we just entered. Mexico's also very concerned with the whole tariff situation, but also safety-wise, right? The relations between the US and Mexico are a little bit tense. So that's where we're standing. We're in a good position now. We wanted to get to 2.7 million this year. Can we make it? Because of basic donors dropping. And now we have to reshift our ways of thinking. So being more intentional, thinking more big picture, finding other international allies, and experts and people like you who have different perspectives and different insights into this type of work, right? So not to end in the doom gloom, but let's open it up. I want to hear from you guys. I want to see what you think. If you have any ideas, ways to move forward, or thoughts in general of the current situation. We're not open it up.
Well, thank you, first of all. And also really, really excited that you accepted the invitation to come and talk with us, and really grateful for the work that y'all do, because it's amazing and it's necessary and it's incredible, like the vision and the way that it's actually done and the ethic and the commitment and the relationships. It's just so lovely, and it's really nice to have y'all here for like the first of our talks for the semester, because I think it sets a good tone and conversation for like a departing point for how we're thinking about this kind of work broadly. Because I think that folks who come regularly, who join online, who watch the videos later, are also interested in this kind of work and finding ways to like make something happen, you know, in a positive way, to like address these super critical like environmental and social problems and challenges, and like co-constructing better futures together. So thank you for that work. And it's not easy. And of course, like with this current like situation that we're in, it's also like very difficult, and it's like head spinning because it's all happening so fast and so suddenly. So
Yeah.
but I just want to start by saying thank you very much.
No, thank you guys for having me. It's really a pleasure. Yeah, we're just trying to wrap our heads around. We're also trying to say, don't focus on the noise, focus on what you can do. They want us to freak out. They want us to be panicked. But there's other people that are like, hey, like certain people are okay. And like, we got this. We're here to work together. But it is going to shift things around. It's going to mix the pot. So we just want to be prepared for that change. But yeah, thank you.
Of course.
I have a comment and a question. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I echo Joel's comment on just how awesome it is to have you here, and the work that you do is really inspiring. One comment anecdotally, my husband works at TNC, and they were recently at a retreat, and they were talking about what's going on, and he heard that during the first Trump administration, their budget increased precisely because of private donors shifting where the, like maybe the public sector is not gonna take care of certain issues, so we need to fund those who will, and those might be NGOs. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
What's gonna happen, but hopefully, there is going to be some of that. And the question is, what's your relationship with, faculty, students? How can we support y'all? Within the bounds of what our work is.
No, yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great question. I've only worked with 2 other CSU students on specific studies with our partners, but I think what would help us, is we always say, hey, whatever you hear from your sector, from an agency, from a person who works in government, like we want to hear them. We want to be so informed from people who are living this. So any study, anything relevant that you find that could help our sector, our communities would be great. Even contacts in Central America, right, Mesoamerica, whoever has a local nonprofit, a local funder, those type of things would help us. Because we have our own little networks, but there's so much in the region that we just don't really, can't knock on every single door, right? So I think getting information from you guys would be really, really good, and also learning, like, what are you guys working? I know the department is suffering from even changing certain language, right? It's gonna affect education as well. It's gonna affect research. It's gonna affect everything. So how do you guys adapt to that? How can we help? How can we also provide opportunities for people who have roadblocks now in education, DEI, all these other topics that are kind of up in the air? We can work together, right? So I think information sharing, contact sharing, opportunities. We talked about involving students into this type of trips, organizations, or research. So there are opportunities to even do scientific research with like GOYAs, right? Like helping an organization down there. So I think that's the best way. That's where we're at right now. Let's be as informed as we can and hear from other people that are in the sector. So awesome. Yeah, thank you for that question.
Yeah, I've recently started working in Honduras, so that's why
¿En serio?
sí, fui por primera vez hace un par de semanas, nunca había estado a la zona del lago Yohoa con un estudiante de doctorado que va a trabajar allá. Entonces sí me gustaría conectar para ver si, pues, cómo podemos generar sinergias.
Claro que sí. There's a lot of cookstove programs in Lago Yohoa. So if you ever need anything related to that, we can, this always says, wherever you want to bring here, we have open doors. Yeah, that'd be great. Congrats. Honduras is beautiful.
Sí, descubrí las baleadas y no hay
Oh,
piel
sí.
y el
Las
café
baleadas
con
son
pimienta. No es buena para atrás, sí.
Well, interesting about Honduras, so Marvin, our coworker down there, his friend worked for USAID, and they basically got fired everyone, all resources, investors, everything shifted. So now people are trying to pick up the pieces and scramble. And they're asking us, like, do you know of any jobs? Do you know of anything, collaboration, academic, nonprofit, foundation, anything? So people are also looking for an opportunity, right? So that's what I mean. Like right now, the dust is everywhere. So once the dust settles, and we figure out, okay, what is the actual situation? How can we help people even find another foundation, another organization down there that we don't know about? So the more information, the better. Right? But yeah, we're gonna be okay. We say this every day in the organization. We're gonna be okay. But yeah, good question.
I have another question. I'm from Paraguay.
Oh, you know what?
Sí.
Sí,
And I'm interested in knowing what's your process of identifying potential partners and how do you get in touch with them, or
That's a great question.
or like how do you choose the countries you want to work with? Because you work with Mesoamerica and Central America, but are there projections of moving further down south?
That's my swing. Yeah, so funny enough, our ways the partnerships have worked, and it's classic TWP has been word of mouth and the people you know. So for example, the cook stove program that took off in Guape, Honduras was we found out this, randomly, like, Googled local organization working on clean cooking or eco technologies, and we like found one, Alesa. And then through Alesa, we met another nonprofit, Guate, and then Guate said, oh, you know who you should talk to? You should talk to that organization working in Quiche. So it all has been an internal kind of recommendation and word of mouth. And to be honest, conferences have been key. And we went to Panama for the Climate Week, and that's how I met Moca, the Mexican partner that we have now. We were talking, we gave a presentation, the ED came up to me, he's like, hey, this is who we are, this is what we do, we align with your values and your priorities, like, do you guys want to come down and visit? So we always go to the field, and meet with them and see the communities and say, okay, we have the money, we have the support, we'll go and do that. So it's kind of like a Peace Corps model, just go and knock on doors and talk to people, get la confianza, and then it just goes from there. But we have been very, very lucky. And the same with the tribes. I mean, if you have a tribal member already, that opens a lot of doors. So him being native, como que da confianza, and so they start like, oh, you should meet that guy. He works in Province, but he's from Santo Domingo. Oh, you should go to him. So that's basically how we've done things. And we have turned down people, like we say, hey, it doesn't align, or do you recommend anybody else, or do you know of any other people in the region? Yeah, y mis sueños, llegar a Colombia. Sebastian is like our ED, he's like, oh no, that's a whole different beast. Like, we got into Mexico, and he's like, that's good for now, let's just tread lightly with Mexico. Mexico is a whole other monster in itself, in a good way. Pero political tensions. I mean, you all know the region, narcotráfico. I mean, there's areas you can go, you can't go, entonces Colombia, unfortunately, with everything that's happening, it's a little, pero sí, and I know TNC is in Colombia, they do that, like big NGOs are down there. And doing this work, but we grow more, we get to like a $4 million, $5 million budget. I think we can do it.
A Paraguay.
Yeah, Paraguay, yeah, Chile.
Wow,
Sí,
por eso.
A ver, un Juan Guaraní, honey.
Ya ve.
Pero sí, no, es el sueño, ¿verdad? Volverse, o sea, llegar a toda la región sería el sueño. Ya poquitos. Pero sí. It's funny. Deberían ver los films, porque los films son muy buenos. All the movies we have on YouTube. There's one on philanthropy, there's one on the Bison Project. You guys just Google Treewater people on YouTube. Montones de films. And we're also focused more on ¿cómo se llama? Unrestricted funding. I don't know if you guys know about unrestricted funding, but we are also looking more for people and funders where they're long-term. So no un año, sino dame 5 años. Give me 500,000 for 5 years. Like, we know development work doesn't get done in a year, right? And agencies like USAID have started to notice these changes. So they have readapted their way of even reporting. But we are trying to focus more on, we want people who are committed long-term, people who want to give unrestricted funding, because unrestricted allows you to plug in money. For example, in a situation like this, that people start losing jobs, let me pay you for a consultancy, let me pay you for a workshop. So this one in the right hands is all about guide to philanthropy and kind of our vision that we want to go to. And there's a ton more. This one's rooted, the one I showed you, the little trailer, that's the whole film as well. That one was one I showed. So yeah, take a look. That was James when he first started. That was 8. I don't know, that was a year ago, but this was a project on Sebastian. So yeah, dig through these. There's a ton. We're also trying to improve our social media, be more communicative, be more intentional with how we communicate. And just give people hope that, okay, if all of this stuff is happening now, here's what we're doing. Here's how we're gonna fight back. Because if we let it affect us, donors are gonna drop, right? So yeah, I recommend you guys watching these. These are great. Homelands is another great film. And we're hoping to do another one this year for Mexico and just the whole region of Mesoamerica. We're actually doing a study for the Ford Foundation on local economies. And so how how are countries preparing more or focusing more in keeping money and opportunities locally versus looking for the outside because of cases like this. So we are starting to interview, you know, local businesses, industries, and tourism, you know, companies, like how are they managing locally? How do you just provide where you are? So that study is going to be a 2-year study with all of our partners and then other partners in the region as well. So that document or that paper is going to go to las políticas, para el gobierno guatemalteco, hondureño, hasta federal agencies here in the US. Hopefully that changes policy a little bit. We'll see. But that may be something right there before, I think we talked about it.
We did, yeah. I mean, I'm still super interested in
Yeah.
like finding pathways and ways to, it's like, it's like complementing without getting in the way, right? So like finding the ways to align through either
Yeah.
students or faculty researchers to complement your guys' work and,
Yeah.
and so I think that I remain totally convinced that there's lots of ways that we could do that. It's just a matter of like, again, like complementing, not getting in the way because like the demands of life on like people on the ground and like trying to do the work versus like someone doing research and like sometimes those things align well, sometimes they're very clashing. And so like just, you know, figuring out those things and then like finding ways to support that also like so through funding and like I think like thinking creatively about like funding sources to pay potentially for like applied research, but in that applied research, there's also money that's paid to people to participate in that or to be trained in that, you know, like on the ground and locally. So that's we've been doing some of that in different projects in different places where like there's actually significant funding that goes to recognizing the labor and time and like capacity sharing that community partners are involved in. So like finding that kind of a model, I think could work really well also.
Yeah.
But again, who's going to give the money, you know,
Yeah.
given the context, you know, so like, I think it's trying to find some foundations and a lot of foundations, I mean, you guys are finely situated for this, but it's, I think from what I've heard, it's like funding model is mostly shifting more toward like community-based organizations on the ground.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that could be you guys as intermediaries or like directly doing work, but then also, like your partners in Honduras and like Mexico and like other countries or like, with the tribes and then like potentially like it's finding ways to funnel money to them and then they actually come back and pay you guys for a service that you
Right.
provide, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, I've been hearing a lot about that through contacts in foundation world as well. So there's a lot of like, emphasis on that too.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's basically kind of the model, or I guess the new hat that we have on as TWP is being those facilitators, right?
Yeah.
Just like, here's your money, let me train you and give me the information and I'll pass it through.
Exactly.
It's, I mean, that's where we are. We used to be more hands-on in the field, but noticing that the partners and the community's got it.
Totally.
They don't need us there. They're
Yeah.
just like, hey, give me advice on this technical report, or how do I monitor my cook stoves, or how do I create a tool to plug in all my numbers and things like that. That's what we're there for. They do everything.
Yeah.
Ellos son los que saben, no nosotros. So we are starting to become more of those facilitator roles, but it is hard to find that unrestricted funding. It's just like, hey,
Yeah.
give us the money and we'll get the work done. Very hard. I think we have 4 or 5 committed, like long-term donors that are just like, here's the money, do what you need to do. But even now with this summit, for example, it's all dependent on federal funds for the fire summit. And so now IOP is like, well, now we need to find a new donor who covers the fire summit. And that fire summit is amazing because you have tribes from all over the country come in and share about fire mitigation and fire knowledge, foundations and different donors. And so that was the topic of conversation today of we need to start looking for other resources, right? It's really tough. It's really, really tough, but we're not losing hope. We're gonna get through this. Yeah, I just love these graphics. This one, yeah. So this has gone down a lot. Foundations is growing a little bit. But we want to focus more on corporate. There's a lot of carbon talk. Carbon is a little tricky, but we do have a lot of corporate partners that are invested in Patagonia. These are the big ones. So always good to diversify a portfolio. And our partners are also doing the same thing. They say, okay, we can't only have TWP, we need to look elsewhere. Right? So we also help them do that type of training, grant writing, budgeting, all of that stuff. But yeah. Is here anything? Las puertas abiertas.
I play the lottery every week, so.
No, and everything if you're in the sector and the studies, you know, anything like that, it would really help us. Just be informed. We're so busy on the day-to-day that we forget of academia, of research, stuff like that, that we could do helpful. Sí, pues, a las órdenes. ¿Y qué hacen todos? What does everybody do?
I'm an undergrad student, this is my first time in here, but
Awesome.
Oh,
Welcome.
yeah, I was just really curious about like, we're talking about Latin America, like, Guatemala, Mexican, I was born here in the US, and I would like to kind of give back to my parents' home countries.
oh, nice. ¿Qué parte de Guate?
En progreso, what's it?
Ah, okay.
Yo una vez, pero de un año.
Ah, okay. Beautiful country. Por lo menos you have a great president right now. You do? Yeah, he's recognizing tribes. He's doing really good work. Yeah, he's an amazing president. En serio, de todo lo que ha pasado Guate. Kudos.
Yeah.
No, no.
No, you're good. No, it's all good.
We started it too. It's the children groups.
Yo soy Paul Cisneros, soy de Ecuador, no tengo un buen presidente.
Oh.
Rarísimo. Hay varios. Estoy afiliado con la escuela de Global Environmental Sustainability aquí en
Oh,
CSU.
sí, okay.
También con la Climate Adaptation Partnership y Climate Initiative.
Cool, wow.
Y bueno, he estado estudiando Environmental Governance por algún tiempo en América Latina, sobre todo en Perú, en Ecuador, también un poco más al sur en Argentina, ya he hecho también algo de trabajo en Centroamérica. Y tal vez alguna reflexión así sobre fondos. Ahora estamos terminando un estudio sobre los proyectos financiados por el Global Environmental Facility.
Oh.
Y una de las cosas que se ve claramente es justo esta necesidad de trabajar con más partners, por ejemplo, la academia, en creación de capacidades. Justamente para acceder a fondos en primer lugar. Y segundo, también para poder reportar impactos. Y eso es lo que estamos viendo como una de las cosas que estamos analizando es cuáles proyectos o iniciativas tienen continuidad. No solamente dentro de los fondos GEF, sino por fuera de los fondos GEF. ¿Quién puede seguir trabajando en lo que quiere, en lo que le gusta? Y una de esas cosas es mostrar impacto. Pero claro, la cuestión es cómo hacerlo creativo. Y creo que justamente este tema de los videos y los testimonios es algo que estamos viendo que atrae, digamos, otro tipo de donantes y de recursos para hacer este proyecto. Todavía no terminamos, así que cuando termine te voy a pasar también el análisis que estamos haciendo. Pero sí, son fondos relativamente competitivos, pero al mismo tiempo no, la mayor parte de los fondos que no se usan. Hay una gran oportunidad ahí para trabajar en ese tipo de fondos que están ahí. Lamentablemente también se necesita mucho apoyo de los países, ¿no? Para poder, del gobierno de los países para accederlos, pero quizá esa es la mayor barrera en este punto y los recursos están muchos. Y sí estamos viendo también en lo que estamos analizando como un viraje del cambio climático hacia la biodiversidad. Y así muy claramente. Entonces, a pesar de que programáticamente no se cambió el objetivo, las propuestas son biodiversidad. Ya como el cambio climático está un poco desapareciendo.
Pero no es real, entonces ya, tranquilo nomás.
Tranquilo.
Te vamos a pasar. Ya.
Bueno, si en algún momento quieres ir a la UFI, ahí tenemos un mexicano que hace mucho marketing, de videos y testimonios, si quieres tips, te pueden dar.
Cerquita es su oficina.
Sí, ahí en Remington, detrás de Colorado, literal ahí para atrás, en el año.
Chévere.
Claro, siempre abiertas las puertas.
Daniela, muchas gracias. Qué pena, yo estoy yendo tarde para una clase. Entonces
Claro.
Gracias,
muy amable.
Muchas gracias.
Okay. Chao.
Thank you.
Traje stickers.